You're welcome to today's episode of Chronicles of a Nigerian Woman. My name is Fagbeja. Today, I'll be reading Nike's story. It's funny how life can be extremely gracious and yet unfair. My story is the definition of happy sad. I would like to know what other people think. Perhaps my perspective will change. I grew up living in Ikoyi, and I attended St. Xavier's School and Adrao International School for my primary and secondary schools respectively. I was able to attend these schools not because I was born into any kind of affluence, but because my father worked for a kind and wonderful man, Mr. Akinjide. We lived in the boys' quarters, which was a small 3-bedroom bungalow on the grounds of the Akinjide house. I am the first of 3 children. My father had been working with him for 10 years before I was born. Mr. Akinjide had 2 children, 1 girl and 1 boy. He and his wife had been delayed for 9 years before they had their first child. So even though he was at least 15 years older than my father, his daughter was only a year older than me. As I was told, it was after my mother got pregnant that he asked my parents to move into the boys' quarters so that my mother would not be home alone because he and my dad traveled often. He took up the education of my siblings and I from the beginning, insisting that we and his children would attend the same schools. In school, most people thought we were cousins and we never told them different. Mrs. Akinjide was a lovely woman too. She didn't work at all. She had been her husband's personal secretary before they got married, and as soon as they did, she stopped working. My mom became their housekeeper and was paid well for it too. I was 13, and my twin younger siblings, a boy and a girl, were 10, in their last year in primary school, when my father and his boss were involved in a ghastly accident on one of their trips. My father died instantly, and Mr. Akinjide, who had been in a coma, died a week after. The atmosphere in the house is better imagined than described. It was clear that things would never be the same again. First of all, we had to leave the house where we lived. It belonged to the company where Mr. Akinjide worked, and they gave his wife 6 more months to stay after he died. She was given a bulk sum of money by the organization. However, there was no way she could afford to keep paying for that kind of house. She gave my mom a tidy sum of money too, to enable her rent a place and start a business of her own. Mr. Akinjide had been the benefactor of his extended family, so there was no one his wife could really turn to. We all had to change schools because there was no way to pay the fees. It was so tough on us all, but we had to move on. The hardest part was the physical separation because we all lived together for so long. I didn't even know any other life, and I was definitely not prepared for the life we were moving to. My mother's younger sister lived in K2 and helped her get an affordable apartment not far from hers. We moved there about 2 weeks before the expiration of the company's notice. The Akinjides rented a place in Ikeja and also moved the same day as we did. Life in K2 was nothing I could have imagined. We had lived sheltered lives in Ikoyi and seldom went anywhere apart from school and church at the weekends. We had never visited our aunt in her house. She had come to visit us a few times, but I never met her family. The 2-bedroom flat in K2 where we stayed was appalling. We had to fetch water from a tap outside and store it in a large plastic drum because there was no water running into the flat. The toilets were grimy and the environment was dirty and noisy. We tried to make the inside of the house as clean and neat as possible, but it was nothing like where we were coming from. My mother got work as a housekeeper somewhere in Ikeja too. We had learnt the hard way to manage the funds she had, because when my father died, neither of them had any savings. They mostly used their income to take care of extended family, and my father built a house for his parents in the village. We could only afford to attend one of the average schools in the area, where we stuck out like sore thumbs, with the other children often making fun of our accents. I was in SS1 when I got there. I planned to study business management. I wanted so badly to get my family out of the current life, but one thing led to another, and I got pregnant at the end of SS2. My mother would not hear of an abortion, and she had to keep working to take care of us all. So I had to drop out of school to take care of the baby. From that point on, my life went down. It was tough with the baby, but I did what I had to. I have done so many different types of businesses just to survive, but nothing has ever really taken off the ground. I have sometimes met some of my old classmates driving by, and they usually recognize me. I would never call their attention because I am too ashamed about my situation, but somehow they saw me. Things turned out not too badly for everyone else. My siblings got into university and got jobs after. The Akinjides left for London a year after we moved. Their mom decided to go back to school and to get a degree while she worked. We lost touch because there was no access to phones at the time. 22 years after my father died, I can't help but imagine how my life would have been so different. I and my 2 children still live with my mom, and I help with her foodstuff business. My older son is 20 now. He is brilliant and in his 2nd year, while the younger one is 14. Sometimes I wish I had been brought up in the reality of my own social class, because the change would not have been so drastic and would not have affected me as badly as it did. It's not that I blame anyone for this life that I have, but I struggled a lot with my identity when we moved. Everyone else seemed to find their feet quickly except me. I wanted so much to fit in, and that was what got me into the situation I found myself in, and I haven't been able to recover from that. What do you think about Nike's story? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a story when I post.